Screenshots. They can capture memories through the simple press of a hotkey and be shared with your friends, but they can also have an artistic purpose. Today, I'm here to tell you how to create cool screenshots, whether it be for a YouTube thumbnail, recreational enjoyment if you've always been a bit of a photographer, or the learning process that goes into it. Bear in mind that these tips will largely focus on ArmA 3 and its tools, but the skill set itself can carry across into other games. Firstly, you'll need a motive, a reason for you to open up your game and start snapping. If you're doing this for a YouTube thumbnail, of course you'll know exactly what mods, maps and units you'll be using. But if you're not making thumbnails for a video, it can be handy to go through the Steam Workshop list and see what's at the top of the charts. Take a look what inspires you and what makes you excited. For today, I'm going to be using Blood's new Vidder terrain, which just released in alpha, along with the RHS units pack. You don't have to pick something that's new and fresh, but it can help with sharing your work since it's rising with popularity and people like looking at new stuff. Now before we start opening up the editor, there are a couple high tier screenshot content creators from Twitter who you should check out for final bits of inspiration. First up is Greenfist. He sometimes uses filmic sources to base his work off of, but the end result is always mind-blowing. Now don't be disgruntled when you first look at these. This is an example of a high tier piece of screenshot witchcraft, which means lots of experience with Photoshop. Next is ConservativeJustice, who makes excellent use of scene setup with custom animations and an attention to detail, this being something which both of these creators share in common. If you zoom into these screenshots, there is sometimes a little Easter egg hidden in there, or an added bit of detail such as reflections, lens flare, or extra editor objects like furniture and animals. The main point is that your screenshots are illusions. They can twist ArmA 3 into something that you might not usually see. It's like creating a movie set that looks great up close, but when you pan out and around, it's just an augmented segment of the game world for you to create your artwork. Now hold your horses. I know you're all keen to jump in and start clicking away at your Splendid Camera shutters, but before we do that, we need to sort out the graphics in our game. Firstly, head over to the link in the description to install Real Light 7 into your game. It's a simple installation process, so it shouldn't take you too long. Next up, launch the game with your mods and my cinematic collection from the Steam Workshop, so you have extra functionality in the editor when we start setting up our scene. Real shade can be toggled on and off with scroll lock, so you can see the difference, but this is very subjective, so make sure it feels right for you. Feel free to copy across my exact settings, but as you see on screen, you want to get a good balance of contrasted, vibrant colours with deep blacks by playing with the video setting sliders. Washed out screenshots can be fixed in post-processing, but it's much easier to do it all in game. Additionally, we'll also be using Real Shade as our screenshot capture program. Simply press print screen in game when it's installed, and it will save a PNG file to your game directory. Thirdly, you'll want to max out all your settings as much as you can, since we're not worried about frames. If you're capturing a shot with lots of land in the background, you'll want to push your view distance to at least 4000 with matched objects. Pop everything else on ultra, and last but not least, make sure your rendering resolution is 114 to 120% if you have a good graphics card. This basically ensures that your game is being anti-aliased hardcore, so there are no awful draggies in the shot. Alright, finally the exciting stuff. This is where all that time getting inspired comes in handy. Is there an area of the map that you were running or flying or driving past and you thought, That's a really nice screenshot spot. Find those areas, zoom around with the camera, and do a bit of location scouting. Once you have your perfect area decided, place the relevant units down. Now, I'm shooting a set of jet screenshots at the main airfield in Vida. I'm filling up all the hangars with jets and spawning in anything that might make the area look like a busy, active airfield. The whole idea is that I want the place to look as alive as possible with relevant objects and ambience. You have to have an eye for detail here, since some items won't look right and some will look great. It's a lot of trial and error, deleting, copying and pasting, and rotating objects and units until they look right. As you can see here, I'm using the idle animations for some units to create a bit of a realistic feel for AI I've dotted around the place, so they're not just standing still doing nothing interesting. Take this guy sitting down as an example of how illusionary screenshots can be. It looks fine from this angle, but from the side it looks like he's not sitting on anything at all. This means I'll be primarily shooting front on shots when this guy is in my frame. Now you can see I've spawned in with the Splendid Camera, and I'm figuring out which framing looks best by zooming in and out with plus and minus on the number pad. I'm holding the left mouse button to pan slowly to get everything angled into the shot so there's no empty spaces or gaps. Another good tip is by holding control and the left mouse button to swing the camera on an axis like so. These jaunty angle shots can be overdone, so be careful not to get carried away. The main purpose with this tilting is to make the shot filled up with stuff on screen while making it look dynamic because it's at an interesting angle. As you can see, I'm constantly experimenting, changing location, zooming from afar and zooming out up close. You need to get as many shots as possible here. What I'm doing is avoiding capturing rough areas that will be hard to edit out, such as the blurry mid-range textures ArmA are famous for, or areas where the view distance falls off. This is a trick I've actually seen in official ArmA 3 screenshots. They often pan downwards with the camera in aircraft screenshots so the blue backdrop from the view distance limit isn't shown. The goal of screenshots is to of course make the game look as good as it possibly can, which sometimes means finding ways to hide imperfections. Another thing I do here is increasing the act time on the Splendid Camera for the AI to move forward slightly and then freezing time again so I can get a different angle of their movement. Constantly look up and down when you're zoomed in like this. Pan with Q and Z by tapping, not holding them, and refine the frame of the shot with your mouse movement and tilted angles. Fill up the entire panel with something. I'm not going to get into rule of thirds and diagonals camera philosophy, but your main goal is to judge how to best fill up the screenshot with something interesting. If you were making a puzzle, it would be an easy puzzle if it's got barely anything in the top left or the top right. Every pixel and bit of space should matter. Make it a difficult puzzle. Now here, I'm moving with the jet to position it on the runway for more shots. I can tweak its exact location with spacebar in the Splendid Camera, which spawns the unit directly under my crosshairs, so I can get the plane right on the yellow lines. Again, I'm picking out what looks flattering to both the map and the unit, which in turn makes for an interesting screenshot to look at. Sometimes I'll fly up into the air and just before takeoff I'll jump back into the Splendid Camera and take some more pictures, or I'll burst the flares mid-air and get some screenshots that way, as you can see now. So here the mid-range textures aren't looking very good, so I get back into the jet and I take it to a higher altitude so it's further away from any visual imperfections on the ground. Keep in mind this map is in alpha and it is looking fantastic, but my purpose as a screenshot creator is to show it in its best state, which means tweaking camera angles and if need be, ironing out any further creases in post-processing. Right, so now that's done and dusted, we can begin editing and picking the cream of the crop. I've got all of my screenshots from my ArmA 3 directory saved, so I'll move them into my main ArmA 3 screenshot folder and we'll get into the post effects process. If you know how to use Photoshop, use that by all means, but if not, I'd recommend following along with Paint.net, which will be linked down below. It's a piece of freeware which operates with a surprising amount of functionality compared to its pricey Photoshop counterpart. What we'll do first is open up our screenshots folder and decide a top 10 and then a top 5 from there. So all in all, after the selection process is complete, I'll be going through and hand editing 5 pictures from the vidder terrain. Be brutal, you don't have to delete anything, just put them in a folder or open the good ones up in Paint.net. Now, I'm not going to go into heavy detail on full-on editing as I don't want this video to be too long for you guys, but the main thing we're tweaking here are color grading with the curves, brightness and contrast, a touch of sharpness, and a bit of saturation and hue twiddling. Make everything pop, but be careful not to overdo saturation as this can really ruin all of your hard work. Now the cool part, sharing your screenshots. Hopefully you have something that you can be really proud of. Find decent places to seed your work and get it out there, such as Twitter, Reddit, and the Bohemia forums. But warning, be ready for criticism of all kinds when it's out there in the public domain. And last but not least, do not spam your work. If people like it, it will be organically upvoted by others and shared by community managers. One of the cardinal sins of screenshot creation is that people get needy to force their stuff down people's throats. Spamming community managers will only get you blacklisted. Find a good audience, such as on the Steam artwork pages or Twitter, where you can upload as many as you like and grow from there. Sorry if this was a bit of a long video guys, but I felt this might have been helpful to some of you. If you enjoyed watching, leave me a rating and a comment. Take care guys, TOMMEH out.